Explain like I'm 5 why English has become the global language. Because the most influential empires of the last couple of centuries, namely the British Empire and the US, are English-speaking. Everyone points out colonialism, but pop culture, especially Hollywood, and the internet also helped. British imperialism followed by American imperialism. The former dominated large parts of the world for hundreds of years while the latter took over as the dominant military and cultural power post-WW2. The US made massive inroads into Europe, helping to fund rebuilding Europe through the Marshall Plan. Nowadays the USA exports culture that smothers the English-speaking world at a rate most Americans aren't even aware of. Because Britain lost and gave up on Normandy. Without Normandy, Britain no longer needed to pay for a continental land army, and could thus focus on their navy. With a better navy, they defeated the Spanish Empire, France and Netherlands navies in turn over 2 centuries. The world's major ports then all traded with British Empire ships and used English for business. Many colonies learned English as a second language. Then America, TV and the internet happened, and the snowball thus kept rolling in favor of learning English. Life lesson: give up on your Normandy. My understanding is that many former British colonies, for instance India, included a different ethnicities and languages. Upon independence, the language most people had in common was English. British colonialism, US neocolonialism, mass media. English is comparatively easy, genderless compared to other colonial languages. Besides other comments, English is also a very easy language. Grammatically and structurally speaking, it's easy to learn and hard to master. Aside from history of massive English-speaking empire, US export of pop culture is huge, especially in Europe. People literally learn English almost naturally without classes, just from the sheer amount of English content they are exposed to. The main reason that English-speaking countries tend to not have many bilingual people is because they do not have a huge cultural influence with a foreign language like most other countries do with English. Colonialism. That's really the reason, but I can't just say that because it's too short for the sub. But basically England owned a lot of the world for a while. Disclaimer: I'm not trying to appear closed-minded when asking this question. I'm genuinely curious as to why many traditionally non-English speaking countries have younger generations who speak English as a second language, when it isn't as prevalent for younger English speakers to speak a second language. I am fluent in Spanish and English, with English being significantly better. And I have to say I really feel sorry for people having to learn such a confusing-ass language. It's a shame Spanish didn't beat it out. I honestly think it's more than the colonialism. Even if that's the backbone of it. I speak 5 languages. And English is easily the most expressive the vast majority of situations. Too many overlaps and metaphors in other languages. And American English is far superior to British. The British use too many metaphors, too. Most of the responses I've seen have talked about the British Empire, but it's also worth noting the influence that Hollywood and other forms of mass media have had. Many people I know in America who have come from other countries have learned English through watching American movies and TV shows. Although other countries have been making movies for some time now, they've only recently started to catch up to America when it comes to production values and widespread commercial appeal, making competition with American products a little more difficult internationally. Because it really pays off to speak the language of the people with the strongest military and the most money. I'm not bragging about being an American, it's just probably the reason. Lots of idiocy in the comments. The real answer is American cultural dominance. The internet is part of that. There's a reason that English language proficiency has increased so rapidly the past 30 years. Across the globe, the military and economic dicks of England and America have had 4 centuries to wave around the world, influencing commerce, trade, wars, and regimes. English also is very good at stealing from other languages, so it's pretty flexible and nuanced. Someone once explained to me that the French hates English because French was going to be the lingua franca at the UN, and at the last minute English got in. I was very young when someone told me this, and it sounds messy, but is there any sort of truth to any of that? Colonialism, web development, airplanes, and higher education were all invented by English speakers. America is the most powerful country on the planet. Militarily, economically, culturally, and scientifically. We've won every civilization victory. USA deployed 2 nuclear bombs, proving we are an unscrupulous and violent country. Our military has infected every continent, and our language has been heard by suffering people as our troops slaughter and destroy communities. Learning the language of oppressors is a requirement of the oppressed. Globally, Yiddish was one of the first unifying languages, making it possible for people of different countries but shared G-Suth could communicate. England has a big influence in Europe, and once USA became a superpower, the language became more important. Other big countries speak it as well, such as India, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and Canada. Spanish is more spoken across more countries, but those countries do not have nearly as much influence. 2 reasons. 1. The U.S. cultural dominance, especially in music and movies. 2. English is the language of the Internet.